You know, there are some books that really just shouldn't be made into movies. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there are stories that don't need to be told or that shouldn't be told. It's just that some stories work better in certain art forms than others. Things that may work in a book won't necessarily translate all that well when adapted to film. It most certainly doesn't help when the film version is just so desperate to deliver some sort of profound message that it just comes across as pathetic. This is another independent film that I knew next to nothing about. I knew the title, I knew that Ansel Elgort was one of the stars, and that was pretty much it. The basic synopsis of the film didn't really fill me with too much confidence. It pushed a whole bunch of my buttons in one single sentence. As the film starts, we're given a narrator that sounds like J.K. Rowling if she were trying to give a narration in the style of Stephen Fry, trying desperately to deliver deadpan humor, but mainly going for easy targets and thus just not being funny. The moments with the narration were also very sporadic, almost like they were put into the film to explain concepts that they couldn't communicate properly through the visuals or the dialogue, which just isn't good filmmaking. That's not the only problem with this film, however, as the other big issue is that the plot is crowded. We have 7 or 8 different plot lines that are all tangled up into one another, with quite a few of them never really going anywhere or really adding anything to the story. I kept asking myself, is this really necessary? Do all these plot lines about the people, the married couple cheating on each other, or the girl with the body image issues, or the girl who wants to become an actress who posts photos on a website that come back to haunt her, did those plots really add anything? Personally, they didn't. The problem comes from the fact that none of the characters get any room to develop or grow. We don't really learn anything about them beyond what we learn when they're first introduced. We don't really see them change. We don't really see anything really happen. We know just as much about the characters by the end of the film as we do when we first learned about them and were first introduced to them. And really, that's also not very good filmmaking and not very good storytelling. If they trimmed out some of the extraneous plot lines, the story might have been stronger. Note that I said might. This is because the film spends most of its time trying to make some sort of commentary about teenagers and technology, how the more things change, the more they stay the same, as well as trying to thematically tie everything to Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot in order to add some sort of nihilistic statement about how things ultimately don't matter. As a whole, the film suffers from the problem of trying to juggle way too much. It's wanting to comment about the impact of technology, while also wanting to comment about body image issues, while also wanting to comment about the dangers of the internet, while also wanting to comment about the rampant paranoia, etc., etc. To be perfectly frank, the film appears to be more hung up on sex than it is about technology. It could be argued that the film is using technology as a metaphor for sexuality, but it's delivered in a way that's clumsy and calls much more attention to itself in the wrong way. It's pretty much more like the case that the director has some issues that he kinda needs to work through. If they're trying to say that the parents aren't afraid of their teens getting wrapped up in technology but are just afraid of them having sex, then that's just another thematic idea that is clumsily thrown into the film. Overall, this is the bad kind of indie film, the kind that's desperate to make some sort of statement but only ends up doing so in broad strokes. They needed to take a look at the story they were trying to tell and really focus on the elements that were the most important instead of trying to push everything into one film. Cuts needed to be made. Badly. I can't really recommend this film because I don't really see anything of any real redeeming value. I got nothing out of watching it. If the story of how technology has affected the love lives of teenagers piques your interest, just read the book it's based on. You'll probably get a much better idea of what kind of story they're trying to tell, because I get the feeling this film did not do the book justice. I haven't read it, but you can definitely tell it had a lot of the same problems that a lot of films based on books have, where they had to cut things out while also trying to cram so much into one story. All of that said, Men, Women, and Children gets a 2.5 out of 5. So that's it for this episode of Romney's Reviews. Thank you for watching, and until next time, this is Romney signing out.